Hello there, everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar on OEE and value realization. My name is Sam Russem. I'm going to be hosting the session today, along with my colleagues and friends, Javier and Vinay, who will introduce more in a little bit. So before I get started, I do like to present a few tips on these webinars just to make sure that everyone's getting the most out of their time today. Make sure that you're trying to eliminate distractions as best you can, right? So turn off the dings on your phone, maybe minimize Outlook for a little bit. You'll feel better for it anyways, trust me. Use the chat over on the side of your screen. It's a great place to put any questions if you have them as we're going through the content. Towards the end of this, we are going to have a Q&A, and we'll be pulling questions from there, as well as a couple that you all sent us before the webinar. I do always recommend you take your own notes. We're going to share this video so you can always go back and see it if you need to, but I always just think it just helps you to pay attention and make sure you maintain focus and answer the polls that we have to make this a little bit more interactive and interesting. And I believe the first one of those is going to be going up right around now, just to kind of poll our audience, try to figure out where you are in your OEE journeys. Are you here because you don't know how to spell OEE, or because you are looking for a system, or because you have one and want more value out of it, but just kind of curious to see where people are at. So enter your answers there, and we'll circle around in a couple of slides once we have some more responses and see where we ended up. So as you're all giving me that information and valuable data around where you're at today, here's what we're going to cover in the webinar. So we're going to start with just a couple of introductions, and then I'm going to take on a section talking about kind of what OEE is and how it can be valuable. Then we're going to do a real live demo. So we're going to show you Grantek's OEE Accelerator and how you can be using that and what the process of that looks like. Then Vinay is going to take over for a bit and talk about how once you have that tool, how you can use that in your continuous improvement programs to make sure that you're actually maximizing the value and really using this to drive improvement. And then we'll close out with a little bit of a Q&A session at the end. So first, who's who in the zoo today? Who are you seeing on the phone? Well, I'm the one who hasn't shut up yet. My name is Sam Russem. I am from Grantek. I am our Senior Director of Smart Manufacturing Solutions. I've been at Grantek for 12 years now, doing everything from systems engineering and automation work through running our MES department, and now creating some of the smart manufacturing solutions that make it really easy for manufacturing customers to jump in and leverage the latest technology available on the marketplace. And I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves. Javier, you want to take the mic and go over yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Castellanos. I'm an MES functional specialist at Grantek. I've been in Grantek for 3 years now, helping customers kind of get on board with OEE initiatives, mainly lately, and more focused now on the OEE Accelerator.
Great.
So happy to be here today.
Excellent. And Vinay, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. So my name is Vinay Govande. I'm president at Enterprise Systems Partners, a company that specializes in igniting enterprise excellence by deploying operational, information, and innovation excellence solutions. I've spent last close to 30 years of my career in manufacturing, helping businesses improve their bottom line performance.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Javier and Vinay, for helping me out in the webinar today. Really excited to hear a bunch of voices chime in on this one. So thanks again, and I'm sure this is going to be great. Okay, so as we get into this first section around the background and value of OEE, let's talk about that poll that I had promised a little bit earlier. So just so you all know, okay, so we got a good amount of responses here. The majority, 61% of you, are here learning about OEE and performance monitoring. That's great. This first section is really going to help set that stage for you. About 28% are looking to find an OEE solution. Actually got no one on the poll who is looking at a replacement or an upgrade to what they already have, which is interesting, but good to know. And a smaller number, 6%, already have an OEE solution and are really focused on that value realization piece of it. One person here is really happy with their OEE solution and their benefits, and is just looking to gain more knowledge. So kudos to you too, whoever's out there. All right, so you can, I think you might still be able to answer the poll. I'm not quite sure, but if you do have any other insights, drop them in the chat or whatever you want to do. So, as I mentioned, let's first talk a little bit about some of the foundational aspects of OEE that's going to set the stage for the rest of our webinar today. So, a couple of common manufacturing challenges that make me think of OEE as a solution. So, there's a lot of plants out there that really don't have visibility into their production process. If they need that single source of truth that tells them what their assets are working on, and if they're actually on track in their production runs to make their targets. And for some people, if they are kind of aware of those target production rates, they've continuously fallen so short of them, and they need to know where to make the next major investment they have. So are they going to get the most bang for their buck from doing improvement projects using the assets, people, technologies that they already have? Or is this more of an opportunity where we really need to look at expansion into new lines or staffing more shifts or things like that to get more capacity out of our systems? And the other one that I hear a lot is when teams have invested in continuous improvements practices, but those teams don't have all the data they need to really do their job. So you can have all these Lean Six Sigma trained people that are more focused on the statistics and the continuous improvement principles, but they don't really have that data from the manufacturing side they need to really make informed decisions. OEE systems are another great help for a lot of that. One of the reasons that OEE is so great is, it's what we call a performance monitoring solution. So its job really is to be observing the assets that you have in your factory and helping you to give more metrics and numbers around how you are running and how you're performing. OEE is really easy to understand. So at its core, it is 3 component scores of availability, throughput, and quality, summarized into a single OEE, or overall equipment effectiveness score. I'm going to break that down a lot over the next couple of slides so you'll know exactly what I mean. It's also usually pretty readily measurable. The baseline data that you're going to need for your OEE system is knowing when your machine's running, knowing how many good parts versus bad parts it made, and knowing how fast it's running. And that's it. That's really all you need for a baseline OEE calculation. So that's what a lot of, those are all things that most automation systems do have readily available today. And if you don't, and we need to add it in, that's usually not a very heavy lift either. Finally, that basic form of OEE, that A, P, and Q, immediately available and useful right out of the box, but it's also a very extendable system to cover more features and add more value. So whether you could be adding in ERP connectivity or production scheduling or downtime data, things like that, all bringing you additional power and context into your tool. Okay, sound good? So now we're going to go through and break down that OEE metric and give that story of availability, performance, and quality. So this is the general take on the metric right here. So if you have all of your time in the day, right, that is all the time that your asset could be producing. But it might not be scheduled to run that entire time, right? Maybe you have shift breaks, maybe you have maintenance windows. So if you take out the time that you're not scheduled to run, now you have your planned production time. But what if you don't actually run all the time that you thought you would, right? So maybe you're having unplanned breaks or machine breakdowns. That's an availability loss, time that you were supposed to be working, but you weren't. And then on top of that, for the time that you were running, what if you weren't running at full speed, right? What if you have a new operator maybe that doesn't realize that you can run product XYZ at 100 bottles a minute? They're only running it at 90. If you aren't producing as much as you could be when you're running, that's considered a performance loss. And then finally, if there is time that you're producing, but you can't actually use what you are making due to things like defects, that's not valuable time either. So we take that out as a quality loss. So I got an example. We're going to run through how you can go from a perfect production run to these types of losses and kind of see how that affects your overall OEE score. So let's say on a perfect day, on a perfect run, we know that we can make 1,000 units on an 8-hour shift. So that means we're scheduled to run for 8 hours. We did in fact run for 8 hours. We ran full speed the whole time, and every single part that we made passed a quality check. Under these ideal conditions, we make 1,000 parts. We'll never make more than 1,000 parts on this asset. It is perfect OEE. Great. So let's start to break that down a little bit now. Let's say that we didn't actually run for those full 8 hours of time. Let's say that we did have a downtime event that took us down for 2 hours, right? Now we're only running for 75% of our scheduled time. And if during that time we're still making perfect quality parts and running at full speed, it means our availability is now at 75%. Our P and our Q are at 100%. You multiply all those together, you have 75% OEE, which again makes sense because we're hitting 750 units or 75% of our target. If we keep on adding on to that, what if we weren't running at full speed that full time? What if we were more running at 2/3 of our ideal speed? Now we have both an availability and a performance loss. And you can see how these two different types of losses compound, right? So even though my quality is perfect, my availability is 75, performance is 66, multiply those together, and now our OEE is all the way down to 50%, which again is true by those numbers. Now we're only making 500 units. So let's make things even a little bit worse and start to add a quality loss in there too. So let's say it's not as bad. Of those 500 units that we produced, 400 passed quality checks, or an 80% quality score. So now our OEEs drop down to 40%. As we multiply all these together, we are making 400 usable product units out of that 1,000 that we had scheduled. So you can see here how these smaller hits and those individual components can really lead to an overall loss of efficiency on your asset, right? You could have run 1,000 units and you only got 40%, even though none of these specific things were really the things that, the one thing that brought you down. Two more quick notes real quick, little side things before I leave this section. One thing that I just think is interesting about the metric is note that since we're multiplying these together, if any of them drops to 0, your OEE score drops to 0. And that makes a lot of sense, right? If you're running the whole time and at full speed, but every single part you made was scrapped, you were not utilized, you were not useful, your OEE score truly is 0, and that works for all these metrics. The other thing that I do get asked a lot, so I'm just trying to prevent something that's going to come in the Q&A later, is what if you do want any non-planned production time to count towards your overall score, right? Because if you're not using the asset, it's not really utilized, right? So there is a separate related metric to that. That's called TEEP, or Total Effective Equipment Performance, which is essentially just OEE that also does include that schedule loss within it. Okay, so one other thing that I do want us to start thinking about is how we can combine this OEE data with other pieces of data and how valuable some of those insights could be for us too. So let's say, for example, that we have shift data plus OEE. So now we know who's running the line, and we might notice that one shift or one individual might have reliably lower performance value. So they're not running the machine at the speeds that some other shifts or people can. Well, that's a big cross-training opportunity to get that person more experience with those people that can run it at fuller speeds and see how they can get their numbers up some. Or let's say that you know the SKU that's running at the time, and you know for a certain SKU you have reliably lower quality scores. They have a harder time passing quality tests. Great signal for you to be working with those quality teams and really diving into why you're having those struggles, and maybe production targets need to be changed, maybe quality procedures need to be changed, but just to have that conversation, right? And then finally, one of the most common things that you see associated with OEE data is your downtime data too. So not just I wasn't available in producing during this time, but these are the downtime reasons that caused me that availability loss, right? If you have that downtime, you can figure out what your biggest contributors are and know where to put your continuous improvement money. Now, I will say that all three of these things are things that come out of the box with our OEE Accelerator solution. We might not see every one of them in today's demo, but they all are capabilities that we have or can add in very easily to the system. So to wrap up this section, you should be knowing that OEE is a great tool to help you understand the situation on the ground using standardized performance metrics that have been applied to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of assets across manufacturing plants around the world. It's a great tool to help improvement planning, helping to back up your project plans with real data and ROI information to back that up. And finally, it is a tool that can continuously be driving improvements in your organization. It is not a one and done type of system. You're using this data to improve your manufacturing assets and find out more ways to improve the monitoring system itself to provide you more insights. So this should be a cyclical thing that is constantly driving improvement for your organization. Okay, so enough with the theory. It is time to get to the real fun. Let's show some real OEE systems and see how that can help you out after I do one more slide. So real quick, what we're going to show you as we do into the OEE Accelerator piece of this, our OEE Accelerator is Grantek's go-to solution for getting customers up and running with OEE. The Accelerator is built on Inductive Automation's Ignition platform. So if you have Ignition today, it's a real easy button for us to start getting this installed for your system. But also don't be worried if you don't have Ignition. It's fine. There's not a heavy lift to get that installed and get it working for your plant either. Also do know this is ready to go for both process and discrete manufacturing. What you're going to get out of it, you are going to see those OEE values that we talked about for performance insights. It does downtime analysis, but really we do see this as kind of the launch points to continue adding value to your OEE system and add to the overall intelligence pool that you're using to make manufacturing decisions. And how do we do it? Well, first we do it fast. The idea of this accelerator is that we really want to stick to what's in it, stick to the basics of OEE, and expand from there to avoid over-designing the solution from the get-go, especially when we know this is going to give you value in its current form. I'll also say that building on top of platforms like Ignition means we have a lot of standard tools for things like connecting to PLCs and automation data and managing things like user security. So we don't need to rewrite that from scratch, gets things running for you a lot faster. And then finally, we want this to be something that's easy to use. So you really can walk with just some basic training, you walk right by that dashboard, you have a sense of how you're running on that day. So with that framing, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Javier, who's going to give a live demo of this OEE solution. So Javier, steal my screen and go ahead and take it away.
Sounds perfect, Sam. Thank you. Let me then share my screen here. And yeah, let's just start the demo on the line dashboard here. The line dashboard is one of the main tools that we have in the accelerator to help to understand the current situation of our production line. So looking from top to bottom, it will show you the product that is being produced currently in the line. It will show you the active work order and the current state of the line. In the first section, it will show you for the current production run, the main metrics of it. It will show you how much has been produced, the target production as based on the ideal rate of the product that is being manufactured in this line, and the quantity of scrap that has been reported. With these counters, the system will calculate in real time the OEE, availability, performance, and quality rates to give a real-time feedback on it. And finally, in the right-hand side, you can see here a comparison between your actual production in orange versus your ideal production based on the ideal rate. And in a similar way, for the shift, in the next section, the dashboard will show the indicators for the shift. It will show you how much has been produced, the target production that you should be at according to the ideal rate, and your scrap that has been reported in the entire shift. It will calculate as well the OEE and its KPIs, and as well as giving you a visual indication of how far you are from your ideal production rate here in the chart at the right-hand side for the entire shift. Finally, at the bottom of the dashboard here, you can have a visual representation of the state of the line during the entire shift. In red, you will see the time that the line has been down, and so you can have quickly a visual understanding of how many times for how long your line has been down, right? So the dashboard gives you a perfect idea of how your line has been performing, but let's see how it actually looks in the real scenario. So for that, I'll pull my line simulator here to help me to emulate production counts and downtime events. So the flow that we're seeing here represents a production line, and each one of the boxes represents a work cell in that line. In my example, the material flows from the dog feeder down to the palletizer. So when material flows into the knife, the system will account it, and it will use it to calculate the performance rate. So I'll click here in the knife to simulate some units that are making it to the knife. And then the material will continue the flow to the rubber and to the metal detector, which is my quality checkpoint in this line. So I'll click here twice to emulate that a couple of units are rejected here in my metal detector, which means that they are scrapped. And then the material will continue through the box former, box closer, case packer, and finally the palletizer where the process is complete. So I'll head here and I will click 5 times there just to simulate as 5 units are made it to the palletizer. So you can see here in the dashboard how the number of produced units increased from 160 to 165 based on the counts that the system got directly from the machines in the line. It also increased my scrap by 2 because I simulated 2 units in scrap. And the system recalculated my quality and performance rate based on those counts as well. So this gives you an idea of how the system will provide feedback of production to the shop floor in real time. But let's see now how it reacts to downtime events. So I will go back to my simulator here. And in my example, the knife is the key cell in my process. So when the knife goes down for whatever reason, my line cannot continue producing. So that means that my knife can drive the state of my line. So let's go ahead here and say that simulate that the knife went down. So here in the dashboard, you can see how the state of the line is showing now as in red, indicating that the line is down due to an unplanned downtime. It will show you as well what's the equipment that is causing this downtime in the line and the reason that the equipment is reporting as the issue that it found itself. But what if the downtime doesn't happen in the knife, but it happens somewhere else in the line? So in my example line, let's say that, for example, the metal detector goes down. If that happens, my rubber will be blocked, and eventually my knife will get blocked too, which will indicate, because knife is my key cell, that the line cannot produce. It's down, but not because the knife went down for some reason, but because the metal detector is preventing them to continue. So let's see how the dashboard reacts to a scenario like that. So I'll fault the metal detector. You can see here in my simulator how the end rubber got blocked, and also my knife. So my line is actually down. And now let's see how the dashboard reports that. So it's telling me now that the line is down, but it's telling me that the equipment that is causing the downtime event is a metal detector. So the system is smart enough to figure out that the issue was causing this equipment and not necessarily in the key cell of the line. So that's how the dashboard will help to understand how the line is performing and also the current state of the line at any given time. So the next tool that I want to talk about is downtime alarming. So when a downtime event happens, the system will fire off an alarm, and that alarm will continue live until the downtime event is resolved. So operators in the shop floor can use the alarm system, the alarm screen, sorry, to actually see the list of all the alarms that have been generated and its current state. So you can see here at the top, the downtime alarm that was generated when we shut down the metal detector. So that alarm is still active, and it hasn't been acknowledged by anybody. So when the alarm continues, or when the downtime event goes on for more than 60 seconds, which is a configurable parameter in the accelerator, the accelerator will escalate that alarm to an email. That email is intended to get to the people who is responsible of fixing the issue in the line, and the email will be something like this. So you can see here now how I'm getting the emails because of this alarm. And the email will tell me, hey, there is a line down. That line is lying down and has been down since 2/22. It will also give some instructions to the recipient of the email as to what to do with this alarm. In this case, for the demo, I just set one instruction here that says, go to the system and acknowledge that alarm. So let's do that. I'll go back to the system here. I'll click on the alarm, and now I'll acknowledge that. So you can notice here how the state of this alarm changed from unacknowledged to acknowledged. The alarm is still active, but now operators in the shop floor can see that somebody acknowledged that alarm, meaning that they are working on resolving the issue. And finally, when the downtime event is fixed and my line is back up, that alarm will be cleared out from the system. You can see here how it went away already, and the state of my line in my dashboard will resume to running. So these two tools, the dashboard and the downtime alarming, will help you to monitor the state of the line, the production of the line, and also help you to support daily operations. But what about analyzing this data that is being collected and finding areas of improvement? I'll show you then the two tools that we have in the accelerator to analyze data and identify areas of improvement. The first one is our production report. This report is intended to understand how the line performed, let's say, in the past day. And it gives you a visual representation of how much time your line has been running versus how much time it has been idle or down. It will give you as well your OEE and its KPIs, the availability, performance, and quality. And also will tell you how much product has been produced, how much scrap was reported, and with that, the system will compare the good production that came out of the line against the target based on the ideal rate of that product. With that will give you the efficiency of the line. At the bottom, the report will show you a summary of all the events of the line. It will give you the actual time that the line has been running, idle, or down. And it will also tell you that your line has been down like 20 times because you have had 21 downtime events in one day. In the right-hand side, the report will show you a downtime parameter that will help you to understand what is causing your line to go down. So like in this example, you can immediately see that yesterday, the main contributor to the downtime of the line was the box closer, and it was because it was jammed. So this report gives you a good understanding of how the line performed, let's say, yesterday, in the past shift, or in the past day. But what about understanding and analyzing further the downtime over time? So for that, we have our line downtime analysis. And this tool will help you to see how your line has been behaving, let's say, not only in the last day, but let's say in the last 7 days. So you can see here in the table in the left-hand side, that your line has been down for 212 minutes, and it has gone down like 59 times. But in the right-hand side, you can see also in which days the line actually went down and for how long. So you can immediately start identifying here some patterns and start comparing that, or finding or relating this information to as to what product we were running or which crew was running actually. So with this, from here, you can do additional analysis. Let's say that you want to see the breakdown of this downtime per shift, just to try to identify learning, training opportunities, or some of the issues related to the people who is working on this shift. So you can break down the information, and you can see in the table here immediately that the main contributor of your downtime is the first shift. So the majority of your events and the actual duration of the downtime, it's happening at the first shift. So from here, you can do further analysis and say, okay, I want to see for the first shift, only for the first shift, what's the breakdown of the downtime per equipment. So you have here the information, and you can see, okay, the main contributor is the box closer. And in the right-hand side, the chart will show you here how the box closer performed each day in the past 7 days. So you can see here that yesterday and the day before, the box closer was the main contributor, yes, But the day before that, the 24th, the box closer were working just fine. And now, actually today, it's also working just fine. So you can do that type of comparison. And you can even go further and say, okay, I want to see what production orders we were running there in that equipment. So you can drill down in the box closer and see, okay, I was running production order 3, 7, and 2. Finally, one more example of analysis that I want to show you here is the end rubber. You can see here, while it's not the main contributor to the downtime of the line, the majority of our events are happening there. So for sure, I have some short stops here, so I'm having some speed losses here, but I would like to see the breakdown of those speed losses and see how many large events I have versus how many short stops. So you can break down the information in this way and see, okay, I have only one large downtime event here. So you can direct your improvement activities towards finding speed losses more than large downtimes in the box closer specifically. Sorry, and then rubber specifically. So this is the type of analysis that you can do in the downtime analysis tool, of the drill down that you can do. And that together with the production report will help you to understand how your lines is performing versus and how you or what's causing the majority of the downtime, so you can enable OEE improvement initiatives. And to talk about OEE improvement initiatives, I'll hand it over to Vinay now.
Every time I go through this presentation, I'm like super impressed. And this is a fabulous tool. When I started my career, or 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have these types of capabilities. And now every time I look at it, I drool. But it's clean, it's powerful, it's absolutely insightful. So what I'm going to talk about is kind of re-emphasize some of the things that Sam talked about in terms of how do we find the gold. He said that OEE, along with some of this information, is like gold. So how do we get there? Why do we need to get there? And how do we get there? And then we will conclude with some takeaways. So I'm not talking technology. I'm talking about operational excellence. So back in '94, Krugman talked about productivity being everything. And even in 2022, that is absolutely the case. And OEE measurement is the gold standard for productivity measurement. And we all know the competitive environment we all work in, the cost pressures, the low cost competition that's out there, the tremendous labor shortage. So every company out there is trying to improve their productivity. And you're doing that by deploying operational excellence best practices. So you can improve, you can compete, and you can excel. Driving a competitive advantage by deploying operational excellence is what is happening all over the place. And that is critical to improve the bottom line performance. So these types of applications, OEE Accelerator, are helping companies in finding the ways in order to make those improvements. So let's step back a little bit and let's think about how businesses have built their business models. And we all know that Apple is a strong innovator. They have emphasis on that. Amazon is all about flawless execution. So the market leaders are coming up with ways to improve and strengthen their competitive advantage. And in order to do that, all the companies with different business models are innovating. And they are innovating from inside. This is process innovation. Product innovation is sexy, and that's what is talked about. But at the same time, for competitive advantage, it is absolutely critical to think about intrinsic innovation. innovation inside, innovation with the processes, and OEE Accelerator is one of those enablers, is going to be one of those engines for you to drive process innovation. So as we talk about the operational excellence cycle, we need to remember that operational excellence is all about relentlessly driving continuous improvement. It's about going from being reactionary to being proactive. It's about building processes that are stable, that are repeatable, that are predictable. And the cycle begins with Gemba. The cycle begins with go see at the source. And OEE Accelerator literally takes you right there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is where you start building the understanding of your process. Many times in operations, I like to say that we have a perception, but we really need to get very clear understanding of what is happening. Because without that, and without understanding the first principles, it is very difficult to arrive at the proper root cause analysis. So it is extremely important for operational excellence cycle to have a tool like this, which is fast to deploy, and it's going to give you the information in real time and give you the true insights that would be extremely useful for standardizing, for building better processes, and then sustaining those processes. So why do companies go about this? It's not because it's trendy, but it's because it's extremely powerful. It has a huge business benefit case. When you think about it, just by starting to observe a process, companies will realize 3%, 5% bump. But what is absolutely proven across many different industries, whether it's pharma, food manufacturing, discrete manufacturing, that once you deploy these types of solutions, you are going to get tremendous benefit out of it. And we're talking about like 20% bump. This is absolutely phenomenal. And today's technologies are allowing us to get there very, very quickly. And companies need to do this in order to continue to build their competitive advantage. So as leaders, as business leaders who are looking at these types of initiatives, first thing they need to make sure is they have a very clearly defined benefit logic. We need to make sure we understand how all this is going to come together. Where are we going to see the value? Operations, absolutely. But the efforts that we put into this are not just for operations department. It is across the enterprise. You are going to see value from customer service standpoint. You're going to see it from HR and people standpoint. You're going to see financial benefits. You're going to see safety improvements. And when you build a key performance indicator that is so cross-functional, you will make sure and you will get strong support from the entire organization to stand behind these initiatives and use it for ongoing productivity improvements. This slide is sort of a classic slide that we use for operational excellence training. So there is a ship that is going across, that's the operation. And underneath that, there are rocks. Those are the problems. And the water level is essentially the inventory. And more the inventory, we hide problems. So one of the principles of continuous improvement on this side is to continue to reduce that inventory and expose the problems, not just to have a bumpy ride, but to actually break those rocks. OEE Accelerator will expose those rocks. OEE Accelerator will send you the alerts so that you are not going to get into a Titanic situation. but you are going to understand what might be happening and how it might result into a potential shutdown of the machine. Understanding those issues and then doing something about it is what a tool like OEE Accelerator is designed to do. So we need to make sure that we are proactive, and then we deploy different tools and techniques in order to improve our processes and break those rocks. So as Javier showed us, this powerful tool in real time is going to show you what's behind this curtain. I often say that as operational leaders, we are sitting in the audience and there is Broadway show going on, but we are seeing it through many different curtains. They are giving us not a great clear picture, but a murky picture of what is going on. And once you start exposing the reality, and especially when you do it for the first time, many of our clients have said that their jaw just drops, because the kind of understanding or what they say their OEE numbers are, and when they see the real numbers, it is mind-blowing. And I like to say that the quote here from Albert Einstein that says that he is only passionately curious. And that is so important in order to improve. You need to be passionately curious to understand what is happening in real time, and what are the 5 M's of manufacturing. In order for you to have control of the process, you need to understand all aspects: machine, method, measurements, materials, and the human being that is involved. So pulling that data from the source is what OEE Accelerator will do, and expose that information. And guess what? Machines won't lie. They will write you up. So for that to happen, you need to make sure you have good quality data. All of us have used the words garbage in, garbage out, and it is absolutely true in this case as well. It is critical to make sure you build trust and confidence in the information that you are getting. So right from the design stage, blueprinting stage of these projects, you need to make sure you're focused on critical elements of data, so that we are going to get the information, we are going to trust that information, we are going to build off of information, and we are not going to guess anymore. That's why you need that accuracy, consistency, completeness, and timely information for you to work with. So how does this fit into the Six Sigma DMAIC model? And what we like to say is OEE and the tools that we looked at, the OEE Accelerator, it's the beginning and it's the end. It's all the way across, because to begin with, you need to define, you need to measure your process, because that's where the journey really begins. Once you have that information, you're going to use that for problem solving, and then you're going to get into the improve stage. But at the end, you have to control, you have to sustain. So you need powerful real-time information to make sure that the improvements that you have made are sticking, and then you can sustain those improvements and then rinse and repeat. That's the whole process of relentlessly making improvements, going back, learning about it, and continuing the process so that you can just keep going with your process improvement. And it gets hard when you begin this journey. Some of the initial, low-hanging fruit is easy to catch. But as you start driving your productivity improvements, the next percent, the next 2% becomes harder and harder. That's where you really need to make sure you are getting the right information. You are building your data models, you're building your analysis models using good information, timely information, accurate information. And that's what OEE is going to provide. And you don't need 5 different systems to look at. you have one place where you can go and see what is happening, but then you can dig deeper and drill down to find what is happening, how it is happening. You can see the Paretos, you can see the charts that Javier talked about, which will help you to leapfrog on your continuous improvement journey. So you need to then think about the challenges that you're seeing, the rocks that you are uncovering, and then deploy the right tools from your toolkit. These are Lean Six Sigma continuous improvement tools. And you need to make sure that you don't think that once you have the pretty dashboards that the journey ended. It's actually your base camp. You need this as a basic necessity before you start climbing Everest. Because from the base camp, the journey really begins, because you need to then figure out how you are going to make it better. But you need to know where you stand in the current state so that you can continue to improve. And by using the right tools, you will then start transforming your business process. So this is a long and arduous journey. It should not be taken up as just for a small short-term win. This is for the organization to build their competitive advantage in operations. You want to make sure that you have a strategy, you have a plan, and then you need to build it slow and steady. You start in one small area, you build your digital footprint, you learn from it, and then build an agile cycle so that you can start deriving the value. You can show that we are making improvements and that's impacting the business. Once you have that, you can scale it. You can go across multiple lines, you can go across the plant, and you can deploy it across the enterprise. And there is no limit. OEE Accelerator will provide you visibility, not just for one line, but across your entire enterprise. And that's what we need to think about as we get into these initiatives. So the part that I want to emphasize, and Javier talks about technology and he shows fascinating tools, but I want to say that yes, technology is absolutely important. It has to work, but there is much more to it for benefit realization. You have to make sure that all your lights are green for your processes and for people. Because without those two things, you will not realize value. You need to drive understanding of your processes. You need to drive that innovation through the curiosity. You need to build your people who would own this information, who would use this information, who are going to do something with the information so you can continuously improve. And then only you will start realizing the benefit or the value from your OEE tools. So in conclusion, I just want to highlight a few takeaways from dozens of projects that we have worked on. First of all, ensure that you start with a good business case. Make sure you understand why you want to do this, where the value is. Then build a roadmap. Make sure that you understand the first principles of your process. If you know that you are in a paint booth, then you need to understand whether the humidity is going to impact your product quality. If you have an oven and you know that it has to be at 175 degrees, then don't just think that it is at 175 degrees every day, every hour. Make sure you understand why it should be and what happens to the product if it is not. And then start gathering the information from tools such as the OEE Accelerator and the sensors that you would deploy. And then ensure that you don't lose track of change management. This is new to a lot of people. This is new to a lot of businesses. And people are learning how to adapt that specifically within your business. And making sure that you're focused on the readiness, the willingness, and the ability of people to adapt to these technologies, tools, accelerators is extremely important. And then only last thing I would say is make sure you are driving relentless pursuit of excellence. You have a platform such as OEE Accelerator that is going to get you kick-started, but then you got to keep your foot on the accelerator to get the value from these investments. Thank you. Sam?
Javier, I thought that was a really great session to kind of go through both the tool itself and some of those guides. So here, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that everyone gets a full look at our pretty faces, especially since I see a lot of good questions coming in, actually. So I'm going to kind of take a couple of these off, and we'll see between all of us who can answer what. If we don't get to your question here in the next 9 minutes, please follow up with info@grantek.com. Happy to catch up more with your team and figure out what's next. So looking through these, oh man, yeah, a bunch of questions today. There is one that is just a good point of information for the whole team, which is it possible to get a recording of this demo? Yes, by signing up for this webinar, we will be sending out a link to the recording after the session. So boom, that is one question quickly and easily answered. So good on that one. Another question I see in here, one we were expecting to kind of come through, is around the Ignition version supported. Is Ignition 8 supported? Is Vision and Perspective supported? So definitely have an experienced Ignition user on the line. I can say the OEE dashboards today are all built in Vision. However, we're hoping to change that very soon over the next couple of weeks. So we are actively working on the Perspective version of this. We are hoping to have something ready in the coming weeks. So if you are interested and do have a Perspective application, certainly let us know. We're looking for a couple of beta customers to sign up for that, and we're expecting to have some more a bigger announcement and release of that in the next couple of weeks. Javier, real quick, I forget, is this up to Ignition 8? I believe it is, correct?
That is correct. It's
okay.
Up to the latest version of Ignition, the latest version of the setup components too.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Javier, keep your finger close to that mute button, because I think I want to direct the other question to you too. So we have one question around what happens if the quality checker finds out that something was faulty and they need to correct a quality value after the fact? Is there something in the solution to help you with that?
Yeah, in such scenario, the system will identify that the quality checkpoint has been down and will record that downtime event. But if for some reason you see that wasn't the root cause of the downtime event, the accelerator has screens that will enable the operators or users to go in the system and override that downtime reason and specify the right one. So
great, cool, thanks for that. Okay, another quick question I want to address was there's a question about if this application is using Sepasoft. So yes, it is. That is correct. So we talked about Ignition a lot. Sepasoft is a key component of the system as well. So the analogy that I like to use, right, is that some of the Sepasoft components they give you all the pieces you need for a sandwich, right? They're giving you that line scheduler. They're giving you some of the OEE calculations, things like that. Our accelerator is just giving you a sandwich. We've already taken these components. We know how people want them put together. We have the basics lined up, and it should be easy to get going for that. So yes, it does require some Ignition and Sepasoft licensing to support this overall. I'll also mix that up with another question that we had, although now I'm kind of forgetting which one that it was, so I shouldn't have said that. Another question that I do see in here is around how 5G technology influences OEE and how one might incorporate those two technologies together. I'll field this one. So, you know, the OEE Accelerator and OEE in general is all about taking the data that we have and trying to turn that into useful information, right? 5G is more of that technology, that connectivity technology. So 5G is going to be a emerging and expanding way to get raw data from your equipment and your areas of interest to a tool like the OEE Accelerator. So, you know, there are a couple of design considerations to think about as we're talking about these designs, right? 5G technologies are newer and kind of a newer introduction into the manufacturing landscape. So we want to make sure the right data buffering and things like that are in there. But really, the goal of the OEE Accelerator would be that we can treat 5G data like any other data that's able to come into us from the manufacturing floor, regardless of it used 5G or 3G or your wired Ethernet or sneaker net of somebody going and keying the information into the system. What else we got in here? So, sorry, I have to read these and kind of spit them out pretty quickly. So I have a question in here, Javier. This one's also for you as well. Around, does the integration layer of the solution only support PLC interfaces like OPC, or are you also open to interfaces like REST and CAMX and file-based and database, but kind of like those other data sources that we might need? So if it's not coming from a PLC, do we get that into the OEE Accelerator, and how?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, actually, we support several ways to communicate to different devices. It could be a file-based interface, it could be REST APIs, it could be a web service. So pretty much, as long as that device has a way to expose its data, it's very likely that we can communicate to that. We'll rely on web services and a business connector from SAP as well to pull the data from those pieces of equipment into the accelerator. So yes.
Yep. Cool. And you know what? It's another good reminder that, you know, what we're trying to do with the OEE Accelerator out of the box is give you that foundation that you can build from. So yeah, probably communicates to PLCs out of the box. Something like connecting to an ERP system is usually a little bit more involved, right? You're talking to IT teams. You're working out permissions with SAP or whatever that ERP is going to be. So certainly possible, but it kind of breaks that idea of get this installed, get value really quickly, right? So we can install this OEE Accelerator for you, hopefully in a week or two, right? It's a pretty quick installation kind of for those basic things. So we like to start with that and then build in that ERP connectivity and the other stuff on top over time. I see a question, a lot of technical, like deep dive questions into the OEE Accelerator. Glad to hear all this, everybody. So a quick question around planned downtime, how you would have an operator go to the system and say, actually, this is a scheduled maintenance window, right? So if we go back to kind of those time charts earlier, Javier, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, you know, normally you would do that by a scheduled loss. So within your schedule, you would not schedule the asset to be producing during that time. Therefore, it would not be counted as an availability loss. And that's where that TEEP aspect comes in too, right? If you really wanted to know the full utilization of a piece of equipment, whether it's scheduled or not, that's TEEP. If you want to take out those unscheduled times and not have them count against you, that's OEE. I think I have time for one more question. And of course, it's the best one that I should be using to wrap this up, which is where should I go if I want to get more information? So if you are curious about the OEE Accelerator or other things that Grantek can help out with, or if you already have an OEE solution and you want more help with continuous improvement, you want to talk to Vinay and the ESPI team, Grantek has more than happy to help triage all of that. So you can email us at info@grantek.com. If you know any of us personally, hello, and you're welcome to just reach out to us directly as well. So that's the best way to kind of follow up. And there's, again, questions are pouring in, so we'll be sure to kind of capture a couple of these and try to reach out to you individually so we have an opportunity to follow up. So with that, we are right at time. So again, thank you to our audience. Thank you, Vinay and Javier, for all of your help today. And shout out to ESPI for joining Grantek on the webinar. Great people. Definitely go and check them out. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll hope to see you for the next one.